here. The first one is from Bezalel Smotrich, the Israeli Minister of Finance. There's really an opportunity to think big. This is possible and realistic. I am completely optimistic. To conquer Gaza and settle it is an integral part of the state of Israel and the land of Israel. And yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree with that statement. We need to rebuild the Gaza Strip. We will work for Jewish settlement across the Gaza Strip. Like our forefathers, we are building the future, a future of settlement in Gaza. Limor Son Har Malek. Is that Amalek? Israeli MK from Smotrich's religious Zionist party. So is that the Likud then? I don't know what MK stands for. Old Smoke-a-Dick. Glaze a little Smoke-a-Dick. Yeah. If it were up to me, not even a crumb would enter Gaza. Ah, yes, world's most compassionate Zionist and member of the Israeli Knesset, Avigdor Lieberman. Come on, Avigdor. Look, Avigdor, if it were up to you, not even a crumb would leave your mouth. You would probably eat. Did you eat the hostages too, Avigdor? Release the hostages, Avigdor. Release the sausages. Also, why is one of your eyes bugging out? Why do you look like a failed James Bond villain? You're like a dime store James Bond villain. Where'd you get that suit and tie, Avigdor? At Marshall's? You cheap This is our favorite crybaby. Chai baby, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Israeli Minister of National Security. We must not stop for even a moment. We need to occupy all of Gaza, stop humanitarian aid, and encourage migration. You heard that one before. We know he's a big, despicable human being. Not even a human being. That's putting it, churching it up too much. Palestinians will go through security screening before entering a zone on the ruins of Rafah, and once inside, they will not be allowed to leave. Israel Katz said this on the July the 7th. He's the Israeli defense minister. He says Palestinians will go through a security screening before entering Rafah, and once inside, they will not be allowed to leave. That's exactly the model, isn't it? Yeah, because Rafah is the very bottom tip, right? The southern tip of the Gaza Strip is Rafah. And what are the ruins of Rafah now? And remember that GHF, obviously in coordination with the IDF and American private military mercenary groups, have established a combat zone. They're a combat zone with they have battalions and tank battalions stationed in these combat zones that are deemed combat zones, and that's where they've put the three of the four distribution sites. And one of the distribution sites is in the north, as I understand it, or at least the central north part of Gaza Strip, and three of them are co-located within 100 meters of each other in the western portion of the Rafah ruins now at this point. And that's their goal, is they send you into this little rat trap and they get you to cross the corridor, the Morag corridor, as we've learned, and to get to the food distribution site. And just they do that, it takes about, and they send you on this little wild goose chase to make sure it's like a death march, 8 to 12 kilometers long, as you heard the GHF whistleblower Tony Aguilar tell us. So even if they make it, they're already starving. They have to walk 8 to 10 to 12 kilometers just to get to the food distribution site, which is located on the other side of the Morag corridor. Once they're in there, they cannot go back to their homes. They can't go back from whence they came. They can't go re-enter central Gaza. So they're, in essence, they're lured away from their homes, and then they're barred re-entry on the promise of food. And of course, if they even make it there, if they don't collapse out of exhaustion and starvation, if they make it there, they'll be shot once they get into the actual site that has the food and really it's just flour. There's no water that's being distributed. So another thing that we learned from Tony Aguilar's testimony is that he doesn't even know how are they even cooking anything. How are they even, they have no means to, make bread or cook any of the food that they have. They're just getting bags of flour. The flour that they do get is laced with Oxycontin. I mean, it's so horrendous. And so they go and it's like Squid Games. We've seen videos of this. It literally is like Squid Games. You see them running and there's shots being fired. their formal policy, the GHF's formal policy in administering this so-called food distribution site is to fire at the crowd as they're leaving to get them to know which way to go. That's how it's being handled, you know? That's just pretty insane. And Tony Aguilar, in his interviews, has stated, why not just put up a sign and tell these people, they don't know where they're going, you know? And it's absolute chaos. And then you're just going to shoot at them to let them know, go this way. And they say that, oh, well, we don't really shoot at them. We shoot, you know, above their heads and we shoot at their feet. Well, the bullets can hit the ground and then scurry and skip across the ground, and they end up people getting shot, you know? Can't control what the bullet's going to do after you fire it in the general vicinity of the crowd. So people are getting killed like that. And then on top of that, they don't really have a good line of sight because there's these berms, as he was saying, which I think are like kind of hills. Let's see. I never did look that up. It's an interesting term. A berm. Okay. So he's saying that there's all these berms, banks of sand or gravel ridge. And because there's this inclination, they don't have a line of sight. They don't have perfect line of sight. So they fire up in the air, but they don't know where that bullet's going. They can't. And sometimes in instances, there's so much dirt in the air and dust, and you can't really even see where you're shooting. So inevitably, these people, human beings, crowds of human beings running in to get this food, it's a mad dash. And even if they get the food and then they leave, they're probably going to get shot. And afterwards, there's all these bodies that pile up on the side of the road, and the IDF says, the IDF, which I think is the 403rd Battalion, is in the south, partnered with the GHF, GHF, as I've come to learn it, is elements of the IDF and elements of American private military contractors, and it's funded by the Mossad. I mean, that's the implication here. Nobody knows truly because it's supposed to be a shadowy enterprise, which it is, but laughably, Tony Aguilar tries to bad apple the IDF. He says that the 403rd Battalion is basically criminal, okay? According to his testimony, the entire battalion is criminal. And it's a strategic policy of the 403rd Battalion to do this. And they have blamed Hamas for this, which is completely false. And for two reasons, it's absolutely ludicrous. For one, it's their controlled food distribution zone. It's just civilians, you know, rushing in. And if there is Hamas getting through, well, then it's a big oversight, you know, that's a big example of incompetence on the part of the IDF for allowing that to happen, if that's true. But there is no Hamas there. So they can't say that Hamas is guilty for killing these people. It's clearly the IDF. It's their security zone. It's their kill site, if you will. So, you know, apart from that, it's just a completely atrocious thing. And I've learned a lot about, obviously, through that interview. You pick up some interesting details. But we were just saying all that because Israel Katz's quote here, once inside, they would not be allowed to leave. That's completely true. They're trapped in that little western portion of Rafah, as I understand it, and they have to relocate, you know. Another war crime. All of it, top to bottom, whole thing's a war crime, every part of it. We didn't sacrifice all this to transfer Gaza from one Arab to another Arab. Gaza is an inseparable part of the land of Israel. I don't want to go back to Gush Katif. It's too small. It needs to be much bigger. You know what else needs to be bigger, Bezalel? Your tiny hat that sits on top of your head. You should make that a bigger hat. Then people will think you have bigger brain, which you don't. The army must expand the ground operation into areas where Israeli captives are held, even if it comes at the cost of their lives. That's Orit Strock. Beautiful, beautiful name. Rolls off the tongue. Orit Strock, reporting for duty, sir. Minister of Settlements and National Missions. Well, that just sounds like a big old war crime. Minister of Settlements and National Missions. National Missions. What's the mission? The mission is ethnic cleansing. Most alarming Israeli statements made. And it goes on, folks. It goes on. It goes on and on and on.